I'm going to convene the work session right at 5:30. Welcome, August 27th, 2024. And I'm gonna go ahead and turn it right over to Arturo today.
All right, good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us in this work session today. Looks like we're gonna call up the presentation here. Here it comes. There we go. So tonight we plan to accomplish three things in our work session. First, we are going to bring back the key academic indicators that we brought to you during the board retreat for initial considerations and discussion. And so Suzanne's going to guide us in a quick conversation touching base on those key progress measures. The second thing is we're going to fulfill a commitment that we made to the board in February, and that was to bring back to you growth data. And specifically to dive in a little bit deeper on that growth data so that we can better understand growth data as compared to achievement data. And so what we're going to do, the third part of our work tonight, is to actually model and go through a protocol and process that we do across the system in many avenues, whether it's our 100% meetings with teachers at the school-based level, in PLCs, as well as with at the district level, and we do actually do this with the traders as well. And so we want to model and take you through a similar process so that you can feel what that is like, and that we can have some fruitful discussions. And we're going to hone in, instead of having a ton of data, we're going to bring to you fourth grade literacy data so we can go deep and you can ask questions and we can answer questions and have some good discussions around fourth grade literacy growth data. So that's our plan for tonight. Okay. So if we go to slide number 2 there, back. There you go, on page 2, sorry. I want to get us grounded on our district maxims. In particular, I want to call out adapting and growing. When we look at our indicators tonight and the data, fourth grade literacy data, I want us to kind of live out this continuous improvement mindset around adapting and growing. As we do these activities with teachers, it's just about that. It's about analyzing the data, interpreting the data, asking ourselves tough questions, which we hope to bring out today as well, and so that it can lead to continuous improvement and growth in our practices. And so wanted to just call that adapting and growing, because that's what we're going to model today. Next slide. I also wanted to call out our board goals, since we recently did work around this, and it's actually going to be coming for approval tonight, later on. I thought it'd be good for us to start referring back to the board goals a little bit, right? And so goal number 1 calls us as a board, you as the board, will support the work of strategic plan by doing the following. First, we'll expect the district to apply an equity lens to policy and curriculum development, support programs and strategies that will increase rigor and academic achievement for all students, supporting those that have historically experienced academic disparities. And it actually specifically calls out support its decisions by using data. So what we're going to be bringing to you is not just fourth grade literacy data as a whole, we're also going to bring you SPED fourth grade growth literacy data and for our ELL students, because we want to live out these board goals of looking at our historically experienced, those students that may be historically experiencing academic disparity. So again, just want to be more intentional about calling out these links as we go. Okay, so that gets us grounded for tonight, for this work session, and I'm going to turn it over to Suzanne to get us started with the key academic achievement indicators.
You have this document in the packet. Right here. So on legal paper, this should look familiar. We spent about 4 seconds on it in the board retreat. We had run out of time, so it was a real quick flash. But during that very brief conversation, we shared with you that we were moving some of the measures around so they better fit under certain categories. An example of that is that we moved to high school graduation measurements like seal of biliteracy, which had been placed under advanced coursework. So there was a little bit of reorganization like that we did. We also added 2 new columns based on feedback. One of those columns is SEL. So we will start to measure our progress in a specific question that we ask participants. And that question is, I have at least one adult I can go to at my school if I have a problem. There is excellent research over many, many years now that when students have an adult that they connect to in a positive way in their school environment, they do better. So that is a measurement that we want to monitor closely to make sure that every student in our school system feels that they have at least one adult that they can connect to in their school environment. And then connections and belonging is also a new category. We moved into the connections and belonging, some measures you've seen before. For example, the measurement around CTE participation was there before, but we split that out into CTE participants and CTE concentrators. And then we added performing arts, fine arts, and athletics. And the reason we added these different measures to this column is that we know that when kids are connected to activities in their school environment, when they find their thing, they come to school. As you know, we've been struggling with attendance as a system. We're not unique in that, but it's something that we need to work on. So measuring how closely our kids are connected, especially at the high school level, matters. And then kids who come to school do better. It's really pretty simple, but there's also good corollary research to show that when students attend on a regular basis, they have better outcomes than their peers who do not. So this is a way for us, somewhat as a proxy measure, to account for how engaged students are in their school environment. So we added that. Couple other things to call out here. We talked about adding growth. That's a conversation that started before I became the superintendent. It matters. We want to measure growth of students, so we'll call that out explicitly on these academic improvement indicators. And then as you look at this, you will notice that there are some blanks. There's a couple of reasons for that. If you look at closing the gap data, which is the 4th column over, you'll notice that 2023-24 is blank. Those data are currently embargoed by the state. They haven't been released yet, so we can't yet place that information here on this sheet, but we will as soon as the data are available publicly. And there's a couple of other measures in here that is similar to that. So we will be using this at multiple points throughout the year to assess ourselves, to make sure that we're making the progress that we say we want to make. Also to bring to you, this is a quick snapshot of how we're progressing. Many of the measures on here will update on a quarterly basis as we administer our benchmarks and assessments. Some will update annually, state measures in particular. So let me pause there. What questions do you have about this document at this time?
For connections and belonging, are clubs included? Like if kids are part of a.
Yeah, I asked if there was a way for us to measure that, and right now we don't have reliable data to measure that. We may at some point in the future, but it's just not available at this moment. Okay. It's a great question. What other questions do you have?
So when I look at under connections and belonging and let's say athletics, it looks like it's growing, but 31% of the total population at the high school participate in athletics. Okay.
What other questions may I answer? Okay, hearing none, now that we're oriented to this, Arturo, I'll turn it over to you.
Great, thank you. So let's dive into this 4th grade literacy growth data. In a second here, I'll walk you through the data set. But before that, I'd like to, you can go back one slide. I want to call out our 4th grade, who our 4th grade cohort is. Okay, because this is this group of students that were kindergartners when COVID started in March. Okay, that's an important piece of in background for us, right? So as kindergartens, they stopped in March. As first graders, they had a full year online. As second graders, they returned hybrid. And as third graders, they had their first full year. And last year, they had their second full year, right? So that's an important piece of information for this last year's fourth graders and this year's fourth graders, because this year's fourth graders are gonna walk into the first full year online, right? So last year's third grader is gonna be fourth graders. Their kindergarten experience was 100% online, right? So that's an important piece that we are beginning to really look deeply in. This is a cohort, and next year's cohort that we're gonna be talking about and tracking very closely till they graduate, right? They've got a story to tell. So I just wanted to bring that piece of information before we jumped in. So let's look at the packet. So what we're using as a guide is this Atlas protocol. We could kind of set this aside, but we're basing our protocol on the Atlas. The second page here is a graphic organizer, and it asks us to analyze the facts. So what do we see in the data? Clarity, what questions do we have in the data? The inferences, what can we take from the data? And the implications, what does this mean for our work as a board? Okay, so we're gonna go through that process. But before we do, I want to make sure that Elena's setting some context for us around literacy and the work we've done so far. Then we'll use this protocol and the data behind it. We'll use the data behind it to use this to follow this protocol. Okay. Now, one important piece as well, going a little bit out of order, I apologize. But we're going to review the literacy plan. We want to be able to experience and the data analysis process, as I talked about earlier. But a very important distinction here is that we want to interpret the data and make inferences, not draw conclusions. And what we mean by that is our data is one data set, right? It is the quantitative data, right? There's also qualitative data. There's also other factors that contribute to what might be happening with these sets of students. As we mentioned, their journey over the last 4 years, right? And so it's important for us as when we follow a protocol and look at data, not to make conclusions about fourth grade teachers and what they're, what's happening in classrooms, right? But instead to ask questions, to be curious about what the data might be asking us, right? It might be telling us a question that we may have. Dr. West, would you add anything to that?
What I'll add, thank you, that was an excellent walkthrough. What I'll add is that those questions should then inform next steps. If you've ever read a research paper, at the conclusion of the research paper, the researcher will often say, additional research is required to answer these questions because the research they did didn't address certain factors that are important to the context, like Arturo mentioned. So as we go through this activity and what we work with all of our teams is as you are analyzing the data and making inferences and asking questions, you are then using those inferences and questions to inform what you do next. We are in this continual cycle. It's often called plan, do, study, act. That's one way that you could describe the cycle of continuous improvement that we're in. But the point is to know where we're at this point in time, make inferences, ask questions, and then take the next step with what we do know, and then go through that whole cycle again, so that we're constantly moving to improve outcomes for young people, and as Arturo said, very importantly, improve our practice, so we get better at what we do too.
Great. So I'm going to ask Elena to walk us through what we've done with literacy so far, to remind us, to set some more context before we dive into the data.
So if you want to go to the next slide, I think last year when I came and we talked about where our literacy program is at, specifically pre-K 6. We were about a year-ish, maybe over a little bit of a year in implementing the core curriculum, and we were bringing on our new assessment program, and we were also bringing on new intervention program. So there was a lot of newness last year, even though we were about a year into the core curriculum. And so we're excited because this is our first year of actually being able to say we are fully implementing all of the major components of what we know research says is a really effective literacy program. So that is really exciting for me and for all of us. So I'm just gonna give you a quick overview of each of those components that are in place and are currently being used in our system. You can go to the next slide, please. So we now have universal screening in English and Spanish in K-6, and this includes screening for risk factors associated with dyslexia. So we do screen for students that fall in that well below range for composite score, and then there's additional testing that assesses rapid automatized naming and spelling and those such things, which are critical indicators of risk factors associated with dyslexia. So we have that in place now in English and in Spanish, which we've never had dyslexia screening before first week. So very exciting for us. We also have progress monitoring that comes with MClass and Lectura that allows us then to really guide our core instruction, but also what we're doing with interventions. I can go to next. We have a core curriculum that is viable, it's rigorous, it is grade level, it is research-based, it is explicit, systematic, it includes all components of what research says is a quality structured literacy program. It is designed based on the principles of the science of reading, and it is available, and we do use it in our English and Spanish classrooms, pre-K 6. We have personalized learning tools now that come with our core curriculum, so provide support for remediation and acceleration. So we have things such as ReadWorks that apply a variety of additional texts, so kids can be reading at their level, whether it's below grade level or whether it's way above. So we have a lot of enrichment opportunities within some of the tools with Amplify. We have Boost, which is adaptive skills practice for phonics, and that is in English and Spanish now. So kids are being able to practice their phonics skills in their English and Spanish literacy classrooms. And we have things such as sound libraries. So kids either independently, this is a student and or teacher tool that we can use, and the sound library, there's a lot of different tools such as that, but those are also available in English and in Spanish. So with our core program, we really do have a lot of things that we've never had before. And we are using them in our classrooms, and we're getting a lot of good feedback from students and teachers.
Can I pause here and
Yes.
check my understanding?
Mhm.
These tools do not replace the process of using assessment data to identify which students may need additional interventions and then providing those interventions in a
Right.
small group.
Correct. This is really, yes, if you will say additional skills practice or extension or enrichment when there's opportunity outside of core or even sometimes in core, depending on how the structure of the lesson is designed. But yeah, this is really an additional tool. It's not to supplement any kind of intervention support that we provide.
Great, thank you.
For that. And we also have a really great effective now intervention program within Amplify. So we have now MClass and Lectura, and with that comes Amplify Intervention, which is research and evidence-based. It provides that explicit and systematic instruction, multisensory, foundational skills instruction that our students need. It's called FIRST. So Amplify Intervention is the intervention program, and then FIRST is actually then the lesson sets and the data that then kind of targets which skills they need next. So it's a combination. Sometimes you'll hear people say Amplify Intervention, sometimes you'll hear people say FIRST. They're kind of like two complementary programs that work side by side. And this intervention program that is a component of Amplify, this does provide everything from tier 1 to tier 3 intervention support. So it's really streamlined and it ties to the core and it ties to then what we are doing in each of those areas. So when we think about our multi-tier systems of supports, this is really finally getting to what we want to be able to do for students at each level.
Elena, can you elaborate on burst, because it is something that, as I've gotten into campuses last year, you hear teachers talking about, what is that? Can you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, so it basically goes, so we benchmark, we get benchmark assessments, right, which start with MCAS and Lectura. Then from there, depending on how students do on their benchmark assessments, then we will identify whether or not they need intervention. Once they're identified with an amplified intervention, as far as what level of support they need, then they're put into a program called BURST. And really what BURST does is it organizes and systematically directs us as to what skills kids need next. And so it groups them. It gives us a lot of very targeted direction as far as which skills they need. And then the burst comes from really the terminology of bursting kids. So every 10 days, you burst them, so to speak. So it's 10 days worth of lessons that are very specific. And then you progress monitor on the 9th or 10th day. And then the program then tells you, okay, this is what the group needs next. So it's very targeted and it's very timely and responsive to how they are doing, you know, what they're learning and what they're not. So we're progress monitoring kids that are receiving intervention every 10 days, which is great. It's very timely and it tells us exactly what they need. And then we can monitor when our students are not developing. So the program really helps us identify too, okay, so this student has been being served in this group for a period of time, and they are not making the typical growth that the rest of the group is making. We have a concern. We need to figure out what's going on and problem solve, talk about this and adjust. So that's really helpful and really nice. And that's what BURST does. And that comes out of the Amplify Intervention program that's aligned to MCAS and Lectura assessments.
To build on that, when Elena uses the word and to adapt what we're doing if a student isn't making progress, that can look a couple different ways. It can be the intensification of interventions. So maybe they're in a group with 6, but we need to reduce that to 2 so that they're getting more one-on-one instruction. It could also be if this is the 2nd or 3rd or 4th cycle where we're not seeing the expected growth. We might be at a point where we would recommend that child for assessment for additional supports that might be provided through special education. So this degree of progress monitoring is helping us to be more precise in the way we respond to what students are showing us through their progress.
Absolutely. I guess to say informally, it was taking the guessing game a little bit out of us trying to drill down and figure out, you know, what the need is next. And then it's so targeted that it's very helpful in that we feel like we can just get to exactly what they need next. And there.
So when you do the assessment for BURST, is it on computer or is it individual with the teacher?
No, it's individual with the teacher.
And how long does it?
So teachers score digitally, but it's a student person interaction.
How long does it take to do?
Well, let's just say an example, oral read fluency, it's a 1 minute. Okay. Next slide. And then professional learning. This is really exciting. I think 2 years ago is when I brought forth our professional learning plan, and we are in the 3rd year of it now. We'll be going into the 3rd year of it. We've had a lot of professional learning and growth in our district. We've had 2 years of science of reading with our staff in our district-wide professional learning day, which has been phenomenal. We are now moving into talking about, okay, this is the research. Now, how does that then develop what we know as structured literacy? And that is actually your literacy instruction in your programming, right? So we've been now segmenting into that. In letters, we now are into our 2nd year, I guess, technically, of letters. Our team started earlier than our staff. So 2nd team of letters, but we have a new cohort that's starting this year. So we have approximately, I want to say, I think 41 teachers that are now in letters in a letters cohort, which is about 30-ish% of our elementary staff. So we have a good portion of teachers that are engaged in either in volume 1 or volume 2 of letters. So we're excited about that. And that is something that they're taking upon themselves. That's a graduate 2-year commitment, graduate level course 2-year commitment. So it's really exciting, and we're growing capacity and our understanding of the science of reading for our multilingual learners and our monolingual learners. So we are excited about that.
I have another question. And so our new teachers that are coming, just been recently hired, how are we, in servicing them on Amplify if they haven't had any exposure to it?
So we did some training, what day is it now? The Tuesday, so last week, we did some training with them last week. And then we have internal systems such as they'll be meeting with coaches, they'll be getting ongoing training on the Amplified curriculum. We are gonna offer them opportunities to enroll in letters in the spring. But a lot of their training on Amplify has happened either last week during the teacher orientation or it's ongoing coaching with the literacy coaches.
And literacy coaches are the reading specialists in each building?
No,
No.
Thank you for that. The instructional coaches at the district level.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Just a huge investment for the 30% of our K4,
K6.
K6 teachers have or are in participating with letters. That's a significant commitment to be involved in that training. So kudos to our teachers for taking those steps.
Yeah. Next slide.
So now we want to dive into the data. Okay, as I mentioned, there's 4 questions we want to be thinking about. We have a graphic organizer here for you. One is, what do you see? What questions do we have? And so we're going to allow time for some questions. And what inferences can we make from the data? And then what does this mean for our work as a board? And so if you go ahead and pull out the actual data sets, I want to call out a couple of things so that you know what you're looking at. So the first page has 1A is the top graph and 1B is the bottom graph. Okay. The top 1A, this is, if you recall in February, this is essentially the graph that I brought to you. If you recall, we were looking at the number of students who have experienced growth, the percent of students who have experienced growth. And if you look at we'll start with the far left, 1A on the far left. From fall to winter, okay, if you look at the green, the dark green, and the blue, so we'll call that about 58% or so of our students experienced average or above average or well above average growth from fall to spring on that benchmark. Okay, so now we mentioned this before, but I want to reiterate. So that means all students. So if you were a student who has traditionally been passing SBA, right, the state test, but you aren't experiencing growth, then you might be in the red column, right? If you are a student who might be not passing the state test, but you're experiencing extensive growth, you might be in the green and the blue column. The idea here is that we're trying to get a very good snapshot and measure our system and based on the percentage of students who are showing growth as well as passing, right? And so you see fall to winter on the left, you see winter to spring in the middle, and then year growth on the right. So 60%, if you look at the far right column, 60% of our students, we can say, are at least 4th graders in English literacy, 60% of our students, 60% of our 4th graders experienced average, above average, or above average growth.
Which equates to at least 1 year.
At least 1 year, which equates to at least 1 year's growth. Thank you for that. Okay, so let me pause there for a second. Let's dive into that first one before we look at the other data sets. Any questions there?
I'm gonna make a statement, and Arturo,
Please.
you can tell me if this is accurate. Would it be accurate to say an inference that you can make is that the percentage of students that are well above average growth are demonstrating more than 1 year's growth?
That is correct. Yeah.
Okay. And so above average is also more, not as much as well above, but more than.
Yes.
Okay, great, thank you.
So, any other questions? Please, Kate, yeah.
So when I'm looking at the fall and winter, and then the winter and the spring, those kids that are below average and well below average, in the fall and winter, it's 47%, and in the spring, it's 37%. And then the growth is 39. It seems to be flat. It doesn't seem like there's a lot of growth. Am I not reading it right?
No, that's correct. I mean, one of the things, Kate, that are these tests get harder over time. So although it's flat, the test is getting harder. So that's a great point.
That is correct. And the other thing is you also, at the end of the day, you wanna take a look at the projection all the way from fall to spring.
And fall to spring is the full year growth,
Yeah,
the column all the way on the right. hand side.
Yes.
Exactly.
Elena, can you speak to how an M class, it does get progressively harder?
Well, the
assessment,
benchmarks for each period, right? So what we measure kids in the fall, according to Dibbles, right, is incoming, it's. We're measuring them at the end of the day on the grade level skills, but it is then staggered for then what we would expect in the fall versus winter versus spring, right? So the benchmark, so to speak, from fall to winter, spring get progressively more challenging, with that spring measurement being obviously the most challenging because that's when you're measuring all skills being attained. So when you look at that first column, fall to winter, that's the growth they made from fall to winter, right? So on their winter assessment, really. Yeah, okay, so the growth, yes. And then the second column is the winter to spring. So really, you're looking at when they were assessed in the spring, but the growth they made from winter to spring. And then by cause, there, out the year on growth.
Great. So let me orient you to the other data sets. 1B is how our students in 4th grade at Cornelius and Echo Shaw Elementary did on their Spanish literacy growth. It's just Cornelius and Echo Shaw because those are the only 4th grade dual classes that we had last year. Okay, so both of these are overall. If you turn the page to page 2A and 2B, these are our comparisons for English language learners. So on the top half of 2A, same as before, fall to winter, winter to spring, years growth, but there's subgroups associated with that. ELL students, so active ELL students, monitored ELL students, and so that means students who have exited ESL, but are still monitored throughout our district. They are monitor status. Osvaldo, how long do they remain on monitor status?
For 2 years.
For 2 years.
So that's the time in which we observe how the students are progressing in all subject matters. And we analyze if they made progress or not, and whether the lack of progress is due to language development or not. And if we discover right there that the lack of progress is because of lack of language development, then we re-enter the conversation of perhaps we need to requalify the student as EL.
So on 2A, there's also non-ELL. And then 2B is again for ELL students, but in their Spanish literacy. Okay, so similar to 1B. Okay, and the last data set is our students in our special education program. 3A again is it's comparing our students in special ed program and non-special ed students. 4th grade English, and then 3B is the same thing, special ed, non-special ed, in Spanish at Cornelius and Echo Shaw.
Because these are the 2 schools that are dual language.
Correct. So wanted to spend a little bit of time just getting you acquainted with the data, and then let you individually, using the graphic organizer if you'd like, What do you see and what questions do you have? So let's take about 3 minutes and I'll check in and give everybody time on their own to jump in the data wherever you see fit. If you want to stay in one area, please do so. If you want to do all you can as well. Okay? Thank you. Take another minute or so. All right. What we're going to do next is to allow board members to process some of their observations. And so with an ALBO partner, so we'll have Kim and Val, myself and Brad, Kate, you've got Suzanne and Elena, and you guys will be together and just allow a little bit of time just to process what you observed, what did you see, what questions do you have, and what can we take from the data, and then we'll report out whole group, okay? Let's look, some time to process.
So I'm looking at the.
Maybe a good hour.
Yeah.
So,
Didn't-
so
the
let's look
progress
at 1A and
The
then.
growth is not really there.
Um,
In this group, especially
So-
compared to the.
Okay.
non-scheduled. Which-
So the testing are, so we get to.
So I guess what I want to know is.
Whatever way.
What are
Okay, I don't know.
the kids that are moving process?
My biggest fear was the last, was the walls. Just visually, been just.
Increase the.
And especially.
Again, 60. Help me understand.
Then the other question I have here is.
I'm irritable.
So what this is,
This-
so.
Now.
That's
Not
convenient.
wondering.
Okay, I'm not sure.
This is tricky for me.
I mean, that's like a separate category.
Yeah, maybe that's what's happening.
And I noticed in another area.
Okay.
And especially in the kids.
Okay.
Well,
And the
that's not making a lot of growth.
Well above.
So,
Above.
same question.
Or average.
Yeah, it's interesting, that's a good catch.
Sorry, okay, here we go.
Those students.
I noticed, I looked at this big improvement here in the overall, like how quickly it went from 43%. And then when it's going back up, I'm wondering.
This number
Because
is not where they achieved it.
But that's to show how quickly.
This is how much growth they made fall to winter.
And then I
So
saw
this
this
number is the percentage.
Spanish, yeah,
Less
was,
than
Yeah.
Okay, right.
which started
This doesn't surprise me.
much less, but actually.
Digging deeper, I'd be asking the
And then
questions.
going to the next column.
No, I mean, I just either noticed these or
So
really
they
know
from
where
where
it is.
right.
I mean, I guess I was
For the first and
Yeah.
then.
looking for like, and then compared to the year growth over all of those groups.
So we're
I guess
looking
we're-
at.
You see that?
So I was, that was my clarity thing.
Yeah.
Is
The
the fact
winter
that they're
displays
just.
only at their winter.
Is
display. So that's why.
affecting their percentage. I don't know, and I don't know. I don't know things about that.
Yeah, so I noticed that too, so let's just
So
dig
from
in
by
there.
the end of the year.
What happens with the monitoring students is that they have been
By the
provided
end of the year, this is the percentage.
EL study, and the reason our kids have their children. And
This
once
percentage of kids.
they exit the program, those skills are still with them. So they end up outperforming on the out. I mean, if you take a look at the comparison between the monitor and the
Well, that's
non-health.
what I did notice, yeah.
Yeah.
because the difference. Yeah, now what is that looking like? They're still on a case of grades or what?
Yeah, so for instance, this high school has over 180 students who are being monitored. So there is a EL facilitator, so we have this. That person is constantly checking grades. And seeing the students are performing, if we see that there is a decline in the content area, then we find out it's because of language, or it's because of lack of content.
Yeah.
And that's when additional support. comes in.
So.
And that's what I'm wondering,
Given
like,
the groups, have these discussions.
and lose
What's the next step?
advisor that does the people center, maybe what's the accountability.
This is
How much
the
of
difference.
this is there with a survey. So if that was, I mean, that would be my inference of whatever you're gonna be writing, my inference is that. Whatever that.
They also have,
like.
they actually have.
Like, why not out from space? You see what I'm saying? Here.
The next one I have to be either what we really want for this is if it's 31, it's 35, so that we're starting to.
You know what I mean? Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Which
They started.
it is progressive. For our students. Yeah, probably we could have done some school, get that to their house, or if they're. It's progressive. 31, maybe 40.
And that's where I'm wondering, where are those kids going? So what, how many of these numbers? Are being.
The next thing about.
I don't know, is there a correlation?
My inference out there is number one, the need for Spanish literacy. It's highlighted, and my inference is
go ahead and bring it back, full group.
Language for you to back up.
We could spend 2 more hours. at
I
this.
know, I know. Well,
Said to him.
yeah, and you know, we try to narrow it to fourth grade.
Okay.
We, as opposed to, me presenting to you as a board and just going through the slide. We did want to try to hone in a little bit, so we'd love to hear from you as a board. What were some of your takeaways from, the data conversations? Brad, do you mind getting us started?
Yeah, of course, I looked at the 3A, the special ed versus the non-special ed growth. And I guess the question I have, just looking at the data that the kids that fell either average or average or well above average. This is a progress. There wasn't a lot of progress, which I understand that, but I would want to know from a practical standpoint, the kids that are making growth, what are they doing differently from the kids that aren't making growth? And what are teachers doing differently with that group of kids that are those kids are making growth? So just maybe drilling down to look at what their specific practices are, and how we're providing that instruction for those kids that are actually making growth, which is typically a tougher group of kids to make growth with, especially in reading.
Can I piggyback on that? So, the students that are not making growth, they are making growth. They're just making less than 1 year of growth. So that's where I'm only saying that because I am currently in the process of drilling down on the kids that made well below average growth. Because it's a quintile analysis. So, you know, we're looking at anywhere from 0 to 20th%. So percentile. So when I think about that, that's a range of a kiddo that is in the 19th percentile versus a kiddo that's in the 1st percentile for growth, right? So I'm still learning through that and trying to really like wrap my brain around that. Less than 1 years of growth. So it's not ideal. So thinking individually about each kiddo and what is positive growth, what is growth for that student that we would hope for and expect.
It's similar to a conversation you and I were having.
Yeah.
At the end of the day yesterday. Yeah, but
Well,
Yeah, does this include students with and without interventions?
Yes.
So is there a way to see the change in performance of students targeted for intervention versus the ones without the intervention? I would like to see that,
Okay.
a chart of that, I think would be helpful. Something that Kim brought up when talking about Arturo's backstory of these kids. So basically, this year was like their second year or first year of having a core reading program. So if you're just looking at it like that, you can infer that they actually had a lot of growth. Because they didn't have a core reading program until now. So we could assume it's been good. But something that we would like to see is instead of you coming back to us next year with another 4th grade cohort, we'd like to see this cohort again.
Oh, okay.
Like follow this
Yeah.
one and see how this is doing,
that's good.
instead of keep doing the same grade level and we're not really seeing what the growth is.
You know, the teachers that presented last spring. You know, they did a really good job, but I would like them to come back and also talk about what they have seen, because they presented. And, you know, now we're going into our 3rd year of Amplify, and what did they learn? And how have they collaboratively worked with the other teachers and supported the other teachers? You know, because I think you and I were talking about that, Christie, about the teachers, the data. We wanted the teachers to come back and share what they had learned. I think it was in the spring or
Yeah,
something. Yeah.
yes, we brought some teachers. And
Yeah,
I think that's a great idea. As we continue to progress year after year and see that change and hear that from teacher perspective, I think it's super powerful. So we've got about 3 minutes left. I want to respect time because I know we got to transition, but Christy, was there a major takeaway that you had you wanted to share?
I could, but you want, I think we'll be more powerful. Yeah, we actually agreed in many of the findings and, we were talking about, in number 1A, how, you know, having that 8%, was really significant. I mean, when you compare from fall all the way to the end of the year, it's about an 8% growth in comparison. I mean, when you take a look at the well above average growth, and that was significant. We actually had a good conversation about the ELL data and how there is a significant piece of information there when we take a look at the monitor students and how we were making the inference of, wow, we were able to provide some type of follow-up or support. We wonder how the rest of the students would do, because the data shows that those monitor students are even outperforming the students who are not EL.
I think a wondering we had in conjunction with that would be, as Oz explained what that monitoring looks like, is also, I'm curious about Avid kids scores when they have sort of, Avid has sort of that advocate that's helping them follow up and track their performance in classes. If we were able to look at, what impact it has when you do have that person or that extra focus.
We also saw in the data how the Spanish literacy, although, I mean, the students are not performing as well over time, even though it is their native language. That, obviously, we're talking about how we need to get down deeper into what is the domain that is being developed, because some of these students are really great at speaking, but not necessarily at reading or listening, and that could be affecting their scores as the rigor gets increased over time. But we also saw the impact of having Spanish literacy as that supports EL instruction. I mean, there is a direct connection. The research is very clear that making L1 stronger is going to ultimately and eventually support the development in the L2, which is the target language, English.
Thank you. Thank you, Oz. Kate, you want to wrap us up?
I'm good. I think we're running out of time, so I'm good. Yeah.
Well, thank you. Thank you for that feedback, and we hope this was time well spent to dig a little bit deeper. And we understand the data, so.
Yeah, just to close us out, thank you for your questions and your recommendations to invite teachers back to call this cohort. I love that suggestion. I've been advocating for that at a state level for a long time in terms of accountability. So thank you for that. We will take that into consideration. And to reinforce what Oz said, just to end on this really positive note, we have good data that show us that when students develop English proficiency, they graduate at rates higher than their white peers. So that multilingual brain is really key for academic progress and achievement, which is why it's so important that we double down on these dual language programs, figure them out, and do them even better, because they're a great support for our students.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Ready to go?
All right, I'd like to call to order the August 27th, 2024 Forest Grove School District Board of Directors meeting at 6:40. We'll start with the roll call. Val? Here. I am here. Brad?
Here.
Kate? I'm here. And Mark is absent and excused tonight. We can all stand for the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, introductions of audience and staff. We want to start with Bethany. Hey, Magnus.
Arturo Lomelí.
Kim Shear.
Christina Meineke.
John O'Neill.
Diana Rodriguez Smith.
Sarah Field, parent.
Beverly Cornelius, grandparent, and thank you for changing the meeting time.
Eileen Flute Business.
David Warner Communications.
Okay, I'll ask for a motion to approve tonight's agenda.
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Yeah.
Aye. Correspondence and celebrations.
Happy week back to all the staff.
For student rep report, not yet, still hasn't started, but I'm our next time. Any recognition? And we are on to superintendent report numbers.
I want to thank you, witness, for the couple of weeks that we prepared for school. This room in particular has been packed every day except today, with professional learning as we support our colleagues as they're ready for school year. We had 3 days with the teachers that we had standing, were able to learn a little bit about our district, but we were also able to differentiate some instruction for them. Provide an overview of our SEL structures, which is also really helpful before they enter our classrooms. And then there have been other trainings running through here, training by our nutrition services. They used this space just recently as well. So that brings a level of excitement into the district office that we don't experience throughout the year. So that's been wonderful. Building on that, today we have our back to school rally. Thank you to Karen and Noah at the high school for the entire district. They did a great job opening up the auditorium for us. Several of us were able to address our colleagues from around the district, our new colleagues, two buildings. We had the board chair, the vice chair, the introduction and welcome. Very grateful for that. Thank you. The positive energy in that space today was fantastic. So good to be among colleagues who see how excited they are about students returning to their heads and the level of that everyone had with one another. They were laughing, tables. So that was tremendous. In addition to that, just a couple of other things to highlight. Last week, I had an opportunity with Chair Kotke to join Senator Schulman at her community conversation. And that was good. There were about 1,000 people there who asked questions that were education focused, and we were able to respond to those and provide some context for the district. Senator Schulman was able to share some of her educational goals as well. So it was a constructive conversation. And one thing I want to highlight, yesterday I had an opportunity to tour our school-based health center. It's really exciting to be in a district where students can walk from the high school and get a vaccine if they need it, where they can get care on campus for acute needs as well as for scheduled appointments. In my previous districts, we didn't have that. So that level of service for our young people is great, and I learned about our partnership with Virginia Garcia. It's just one more area of learning for me, in terms of my new role and how I can support the district. So overall, busy couple of weeks, but all good stuff, and we are ready for students to come back.
All right, thank you. Diane is here tonight, but not with the report from FGEA, but welcome.
Thank you.
And unscheduled public appearance, Bethany or Kathy? Okay, Bethany. Bethany, okay.
Okay.
Or Kathy. All right, so we are on to the consent agenda. The consent agenda is made up of routine, non-controversial items to be voted on under one motion. Are there any items within the consent agenda? Yeah, within the consent agenda that a board member or the superintendent wishes to discuss separately? Nope. Seeing none, is there a motion to approve?
I move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
All right,
See you now.
Let there be light.
well, right, and I heard the owl in there giving a little shout out.
Yeah, I was just pleased with what you guys were doing.
Thank you very much. And that's kind of exciting. All right. So we are on to action items. Number one, Harvey Clark and Eileen. Oh, she's already here. Okay. Welcome.
Good evening. Tonight we have one action item, sorry. The Harvey Clark CMGC RFP award. And back in, I think, June, we brought to the board approval to use the CMGC process for Harvey Clark's bond projects. And so we went through the RFP process this summer to select a CMGC contractor. And we had 10 proposals. We interviewed 3 firms, and the selection committee is recommending to award the contract to 5 Star Builders.
Any questions?
What did you like best about them and the other two?
Their connection to local community and local spend, local community, and putting back into our, our taxpayer base. They've also done Dilley Elementary this summer and Neil Armstrong. And a lot of the work that they're doing on those 2 projects is going to be very similar. So we've already kind of worked out a lot of the kinks. So it'll be hopefully a little more seamless.
And it was about the same, the cost was about the same, or you don't really know yet.
Right.
Until we get the scope of work. All right. Thanks.
Do I have a motion to award the CMGC RFP to 5 Star Builders for the Harvey Clark Elementary School renovations and seismic improvements projects?
So moved.
Second? Yeah.
Any discussion? And roll call vote? No. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
It's
I'm sorry, it's roll call, but then, all right.
up to you. You can do either way.
Okay, school board superintendent working agreements. As a reminder, we spent time with each other in July at a retreat where we reviewed all of the board and superintendent working agreements. We made some revisions and updates based on the conversation we had. When we were together 2 weeks ago, we brought to the board a red line copy of the revisions so that you can see the recommended changes based on that conversation. That was a first read. Tonight, we're back for a second read and action. You have in your packet both a clean copy that accepted all of the changes that we've discussed, as well as the red line copy if we need to review that. Any questions about the changes? Okay, do I have a motion to approve the board superintendent working agreements for the 2024-25 school year as presented?
So moved.
Second. Second. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Okay, school board goals. Similar to the previous action item in our retreat in July, we've had a conversation around goals for the school board. It was an excellent conversation that was pretty vigorous in challenging what we had up there historically and where we want to go. The board decided to pare the goals down from 5 to 3, using more concise goals and language to achieve, I think, some really high leverage outcomes for our school district. So similar to the last one, we brought to you a red line copy in the last board meeting with recommended changes. We're bringing back to you now that same red line as well as a clean copy for a second read in action. And I know we're going through this quickly tonight, but this was a pretty significant shift for our goals, and Arturo spoke to this a little bit in the work session about having goals that we actually work towards specifically and continue to have in front of us, and we changed the language so they would feel more like a checklist of things that we're making sure we're accountable to and also checking off. So I'm pretty excited to see it get kind of whittled down to the ones that we're really gonna focus on, and I think it's goal 3 that talks a lot about legislative advocacy and building a plan around what that is gonna look like this year in particular, and I know we've already done some work towards that, so. Do I have a motion to approve school board goals for the 2024-25 school year as presented?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Future action items. Eileen.
So tonight we have the 25-26 budget development calendar for the first reading. It's hard to believe we haven't even started the first day of school for 2025. We're already talking about the next year. The budget calendar that is in the packet today is based on last year's calendar. We did not make any major changes. It still has 3 official budget committee meetings in May, one of which is optional. So, I guess at this point, we're just looking for you to review it and take action at the next board meeting.
But these say Monday at 5:30, the February 25th. Budget 101 Monday at 5:30.
So the February and
April 22nd.
April are work sessions for the board meeting, where the budget committee will join the board.
But aren't they gonna be Tuesdays now?
Okay,
Just for next.
so then they have to be Tuesday, yeah. I think the date is, it just needs to be
I'll check
updated for Tuesday.
the date, but this, I just want to clarify that
It is
it's gonna be
Tuesdays now.
Tuesdays, yeah.
We will update that for the next board meeting. Second.
Yeah, April 22nd is Tuesday, it just says Monday on here.
Thank you.
Well, it's really hard for me to remember that we have board meetings on Tuesdays now, so I'm trying to like really focus on it. I don't wanna go, you know. Want to be clear on it. How many vacancies do we have? Sorry.
The vacancies will be, I'll bring those to you guys at the next board meeting. So we'll publish the vacancies and the process for electing those members.
Do you remember how many we're at?
No.
You can make a
Like 2 or 3?
Two
I would know.
and an alternate, maybe,
Sounds good.
but
4.
I'll bring that at the next meeting. We'll
Okay.
have the whole process. So,
Okay, cool.
okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
All right, future board items, board discussion. Attended any parks and actions?
I have. Everyone. I am the chairman of the Park and Rec Commission, and we are in the process of looking at fees and dues and fees. And having discussions about all the work that's going on. Right.
I also attended the city visioning committee. There's a group that was convened, survey went out to the community, and then they invited different people to join, and this was the second meeting, and and David were also there. We are moving forward with trying to make sure that people fill out the vision surveys. And actually, I received a call today for further discussions about what that might look like in the school district. But if you have yet to fill out the city vision survey, really trying to get just anyone to think about doing it. And we also pointed out that the survey itself takes about 15 minutes, and many people, when they see 15 minutes, you know, are not going to do the survey. So they've created for us a shorter version of it, intercept surveys that we can just do on paper. They are hoping to be at some school events and looking for participation of just being able to ask people as they're walking by or their pieces. Beverly, I'll get you this link because I know you can get it out to your community. So anyway, just another plug for that right now. And I think that's everything. Unless there's anything else.
Well done, Christie.
Way to go.
Sure. Okay,
Record.
this is it. It's over. Yeah, it's been happening. All right. Adjourning at 6:54 p.m.
Yeah.